Hi guys, welcome. Today I've got 3 Victorian projects and I'm very excited about them. First, I'm going to make some embellishments for this first project before I get started painting. And so I have a coffee and water mixture. I just lightly apply 1 coat for each. You can make this as light or as dark as you like. And so now I'm just going to use my glue stick. I'm going to glue this onto some chipboard. I get this chipboard from Amazon and I really like using it. I go through quite a bit of it because I really like making these embellishments for my projects. And so that's just a photo of a Victorian lady in her dress and a summer hat. And this is just a description that came along with the photo. This is from a clip art book. I don't know if you could still find it. I've had it for many years, but it's like the old Dover clip art books. And so every once in a while I like to break that out and photocopy some pictures in that. And this is just a description that came with the photo. It describes the woman, her dress, and the type of dresses they wore, and also describes the unusual hat that she's wearing in this particular outfit. So now I just have a piece of linen. I absolutely love linen. I love the way it looks. I love the color. I love the feel. And now this here that I'm tearing apart is from a how do you say, a roll or a twist of linen. I do believe that this is actual real natural linen, and so I'm just taking those apart so I can make a ribbon for this. Okay, so here is the item. What that is there is a candlestick at the bottom. I glued a finial at the top. Super simple. I painted it antique white, and now I'm just taking my sponge and I'm going over it with regular pure white acrylic paint just to give it a little bit of interest and variation. Sometimes I don't like my projects to be one flat color. I like to kind of build and just give it a little bit of a different look. And so again, this is really simple, just a candlestick from the thrift store. The finial, I'm sure I thrifted that somewhere. And we're just going to get this a little bit, speckled. I do love the texture as well. Now I have the burnt umber, and that's just an acrylic paint with my cosmetic sponge. I'm just doing a very, very light touch on this. I don't want to overpower this piece with anything that will distract from this kind of like a natural, clean Victorian antique piece. But I did want just a little something. I love my age, and so I always got to kind of throw that on there. So I kind of have this idea, and I thought, well, let's just go with it. I really like how it turns out. So I've got that burnt umber again. I spritzed it with some water just to get it more fluid. I'm putting it on my brush, and I'm giving this just a little bit of speckling. I really like this. This is something that I think we did a lot of during Easter on our eggs that we had, but I wanted to carry it over to this for a unique look. And I did get a little heavy-handed there on a couple of spots. Not a big deal. I could cover it up if I want to, or just leave it the way it is. And so we're just going to, I don't know if there's a better way to do this speckling. This turned out well for me. Now we have the fibers again. That is a linen strip. So I tie this around the top. And after I tied it, I decided that that piece of fabric was a little too bulky. So what I'm going to do is just snip that on the end and give that a nice tear. I always like to tear my fabric because it has, like a nice natural fraying on the edges. And most fabric tears very easily. Now that I've got the fabric tied on, I'm taking my tag that I made and I do put it underneath that fabric. I like to keep, strings and things like that kind of hidden. I want to minimize the busyness going on, and so I end up tucking those underneath the fabric. And so now I have it on the right. I didn't like that. I do like to put everything over to the left. It's just a kind of a go-to look for me. And so we're just going to get that tied on there. I do want to make sure that that doesn't stick out like that. So I do pull it just a little bit to get that to loosen and lay down a little bit more flat. I really like this piece a lot. So I felt like it needed just a little bit of something, and I love to use buttons, but I did find this. I had made it a while ago. All it is a little bit of coffee stained muslin and sewed to make a backing for that button. So I just hot glued that button on, and here is the finished project number 1. For project number 2, I got this at the junkyard down the street from my house, and I absolutely love the design in the middle of this. I do not love the 80s lace. That definitely has to go. And so I'm just going to remove all of this. There's some brown fabric as a backing. I removed that as well. So this is something that I've never done before because I didn't think the lace, which is usually a polyester, I didn't think it would take color very well. Usually if you try to dye fabrics like this, it just doesn't take because of the polyester. But there must be something in the coffee. You guys, this, I am just in love with this. I want to do a lot more projects using the lace. And so it's very simple. It's just a coffee and water mixture like I like to stain my papers. And I'm so surprised at how well it held this color. Look how absolutely beautiful that is. And stick around because I'm going to show you some more examples of what you can use that stain on with lace. And so I'm just going to take this frame and I'm sanding it down a little bit so I can give it a little bit of tooth so it will take the antique wax a little bit better. And so I'm just going to apply that antique wax. So while I was staining that frame, I decided before I throw this outside to dry, I want to spritz it with water and just kind of break up that darkness a little bit, give it a little bit of interest. So I'm just spritzing it with water. It's going to make that coffee spread, and I'm going to throw it outside in the sun so it can dry really quickly. So now I've just got my palette knife, and I believe that is a pure white and acrylic paint. So I'm just going to go over this and give it a really aged, chipped look. I've got a couple of little bit of a process here going, and again, I'm really digging these palette knives. I think it works really, really great. I have so much fun. I just want to use it all the time. And so here I am going to use it on this one. And it just reminds me of something that you'd find, at an antique store, or just, laying up in somebody's attic forever, and it's got all these layers of paint through the years. This is a great way to add that chipped effect without, laying the paint down and then trying to sand it down or remove it. Instead, you just lay it down once and it already looks chipped. So after I do this first step, what I'm going to do is I'm going to dry it, and then I'm going to give it a wash with the acrylic paint and some water. After laying down that wash, what I want to do before it dries is just wipe it back up. I do want to see the wood through there. I just didn't want, a really harsh wood tone coming through. And again, this just makes it look like through the years it was painted, removed, and then painted again. So after removing that wash just a little bit, I'm going back over it with the white. I want to brighten it up. So we've got about 3 layers on there. And the key to this is build, build, build. The more paint and building you do, the better it looks, I believe. And so I'm just going to dry this real quick, and then we're going to get this piece assembled. And oh my gosh, you guys, look how beautiful this is. When I spritzed that water, it lightened it there, and then a little bit of variation right there. I think this is probably one of the most gorgeous things I've ever seen. That's just me. But so, okay, let's get this assembled. Oh, and I wanted to show you guys some more examples. So this is like a cafe curtain, and I'm not going to cut this up or use it. This is mine. I've had it forever, and I'm always going to keep it. But I want to show you an example. You can find these at thrift stores. Not all the time. Actually, yeah, you can find them pretty easily. If not in a cafe type curtain, you can find them as like tablecloths. It's just a polyester, and I think this would be so beautiful stained. And look at all of that detail. We've got the scalloping across the top. Think of all the things you can do with that. This again is also a curtain panel, and I do not plan on cutting this up or using it, but I wanted to show you as an example some of these really beautiful detail that comes with this lace curtains and tablecloths. You can cut those out and add them to frames, or also back into an embroidery hoop. There's all kinds of things unbelievably beautiful. For project number 3, I have this recipe card holder. I've already given it 1 coat of white paint with my sponge. I do want to create a texture on this. I'm not real big on using paintbrushes on metal because of the pull and the streaks. So not only does it make the coverage a lot easier with the sponge, it just creates a nice texture that I'm going for, and I'll show you why here in a little bit, why I like that texture so much. So let's go ahead and get I think I did about 2 coats on this one. I do like to make tags and embellishments for a lot of my pieces. It's kind of the thing that I like to do. So I'm going to use that coffee and water mixture again and get this dried really quick. I'm making a few different pieces, and then I'm going to decide as I go which one I want to use. I decided to go with this one here, and I am putting that right over that lid and container. I closed it there, glued that over the top. What I'm going to do is after that dries, I'm just going to take a blade and cut across. I'm adding the photocopy of a wax seal. I do like the balance between that label and the roundness of the seal. It just looks nice to me. So here is an image of a Victorian lady in her home at her writing desk. And I just like the way these are all ephemera for, antique or vintage writing materials. And so I'm just going to take that blade, cut right across the top for a nice smooth look. And so here's what I was talking about, the tooth that it creates when you use a sponge on metal like this, or on anything really. It creates a nice speckling or tooth, and I'm using my ink just to age this a little bit. Because of that, the ink is going to grab a lot better, and it just looks really neat. I love the texture of it, and this is a fun way. You can use acrylic paint, but you run the risk of it getting kind of messy. So I opted for the ink and a dauber, and it just looks a lot more softer and smooth. So I'm creating that speckling again with my brush and watered down acrylic. I thought it added just a nice little touch and some interest. So I'm just going to go around and lightly give that a couple of sprinkles. So here is a McCall's pattern paper. I used this in a previous video. I do like to make this stuff as a filler for my items, especially at craft shows or farmers markets. When I need to fill a basket, I will cut a bunch of this or other maybe like gift tissue and just create my own filler. And so I'm going to take some of this pattern paper. I do cut those in, I think that's about a 1/2 inch to 1/4 of an inch wide. And so if you decide to do that, you can cut them as thin or thick as you want. And sometimes you'll get little funky pieces in there, and you just pull those out, like this one here, my little Edward Scissorhands funky pieces. I think I end up tossing a couple of those out. But anyways, yeah, so you just crumple that up. It's a really fun, nice way to add interest to your items at craft shows, farmers markets, or even if you have a craft booth. It's a great, inexpensive way to add filler. And so we're just going to get that scrunched together. I like to crumple it up. It gives it a nicer look. And then we just stuff that right down in there, and you've got yourself a nice way to display your items. And so that's it for this video. I had a lot of fun making these projects. Let me know which one is your favorite. Once again, thank you for all of your kind words and support. I really appreciate it. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.